So, here we go.
It was filled with childish frustrations and complexes. The police are searching for James Thomas.
Hello, hello, hello. You're listening to Midnight Movie Gang. It is currently, I'm looking for a fucking clock. It is currently 1:28 p.m. Night Movie Gang.
Yeah.
And
Early one.
yeah, an early one. This isn't the early. I think the earliest we've done like a, I think we did like a 9:30 at your
Yeah.
place once for something.
Yeah, I think so.
But yeah, today, my name is Elsie Hines. I'm here with my buddy Joseph. I'm here with my buddy Rian.
Howdy.
Howdy ho, howdy hey. And today we are talking about, for those of you just tuning in, if this is your first episode, this is a show where we talk about kind of genre film, sci-fi, horror, like lesser known films.
Yeah.
Usually these movies are pretty well known, but up till recently, 28 Days Later has been a very hard movie to find.
Yeah.
It's up until the release of the trailer for 28 Years Later, which is pretty much, that's why we're talking about these movies pretty much, is that the trailer kind of like re-peaked at least interest in me of these movies, which I hadn't seen these movies for a long time. But 28 Days Later was you couldn't rent it, and the DVDs and Blu-rays secondhand were like really hard to find and expensive.
Yeah, which is weird because it was a pretty popular movie when it came out.
Yeah, it was.
Sure.
Like, it was all over the map.
Yeah, it's got to be something about. I'm just looking at the what's it called? The Wikipedia page here. It could be. I mean, these production companies. I don't know if either of them are still active. Oh yeah, so that makes sense. These movies were produced by like some Disney subsidiaries when Disney was trying to do like some adult movies.
Yeah.
You know, kind of deal. So that
Like Miramax.
It's weird.
yeah, and that makes sense because ever since the Bob Iger takeover, I feel like a lot of that, you know, Buena Vista and like a lot of like the quote unquote adult Disney content, they've been very much like trying to avoid that in their brand.
I thought this was a Columbia movie.
The second one might be. I mean,
I could have sworn.
this is also Wikipedia.
Because we got the 100 Years of Columbia thing before this movie.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that might be who the rights holders are now.
Oh, yeah.
Because we watched this movie. We rented both these movies online.
Yeah, I think it's like Columbia and Fox or something like that. It's weird.
The only reason we didn't watch the because I own the DVDs, and at this point I'm like, wow, I'm lucky that I have the DVDs because they're so hard
Yeah,
to get
me
secondhand. Like the cheapest I found them online was like $80, but both the DVDs I have are both the full screen 4:3 pan and scan ratio, and I know here I could have tolerated it, but Joseph, I knew that you wanted.
I'm a real snob about that.
Yeah.
It bugs me for some reason.
Yeah. But yeah, today we're talking about both these movies. Before we get started into going into the first one, boys, tell me a history about when you first saw these movies, like what their place for you in pop culture, and your history with this IP.
Yeah. Well, this is like my favorite movie. I think I've said it earlier on the show before. I have like a really strong connection. Well, this was my first R-rated movie I'd ever seen. I think it was my first like real movie that I had ever seen, and it was kind of. And then I watched it a billion times growing up, and now as an adult, I can appreciate it so much more than I did as a kid. So now I have both rose-tinted goggles, so I don't even see the flaws, and now I've seen enough movies to where I can appreciate the stuff that it does well. So it's just an all-around good time for me.
Rock and roll.
And the second one's fun too.
I saw this when it came out in the early 2000s. Theatrical release. I was genuinely impressed by it. And also this was around the time when a lot of zombie movies were kind of picking up steam, and it was becoming a resurgent, popular kind of like, oh, well, this isn't an expensive movie to make. Just get some, FX crews and some makeup and have a ball. But what I loved about it was that there was an intelligence and a sense of taste to this movie that a lot of other zombie-related or adjacent stuff had.
Yeah.
And, and of course, I love the soundtrack, just like I think when we were watching it, you, Joseph, said it reminded you of like a mixtape kind of.
Yeah.
You've got Brian Eno, Godspeed You Black
It's
Emperor.
an amazing soundtrack.
And years later, it dawned on me, and I found it's actually on the Wikipedia page that the scriptwriter Alex Garland admitted that, and I think I brought this up when we were watching it, that he took inspiration from the John Wyndham novel Day of the Trippids.
Right.
Because there's a lot of the first movie that it's very much the same plot beats. And I've even said, like, people say, oh, this is a zombie movie. It's like, actually, it's a loose readaptation of Day of the Trippids.
Yeah, there really aren't all that many zombies in this movie.
No.
No.
It pretty much picks up the torch of what Wyndham was known for, these cozy apocalypses.
The zombies are kind of just like a source of pressure.
Yeah.
But like the real monster of the movie is like this like just hopeless situation. Like the thought that there's just no future and there's no point.
Like I was saying throughout the second half of our viewing the other day, I was like, yes, maybe man is the true monster.
Right. that recurrent theme,
Yeah.
you know, like,
But yeah, no, I mean, there definitely is something that I didn't realize necessarily until rewatching both these films, is that there is a big fundamental change to the way that these zombies function that like just makes the story feel more interesting and fresh and different than a lot of other zombie films.
Yeah.
And that is like, it's not that they're fast zombies necessarily, because like there's other content that has fast zombies that kind of falls into a lot of similar tropes, but the fact that you become a zombie so quickly.
Yeah, it's so cruel. Like I think about like Shaun of the Dead, and they're having like this whole like long argument about like whether they should kill his mom.
Yeah.
And it's like, you just don't get the chance here. Like that's
right.
It's like a major plot point is like, you don't have time to think about it. Like you either make the choice now or you're dead.
dead, right.
Yeah.
100%.
It kind of reminded me, even though it's hard for me to regard this as a zombie movie, but just the whole, you know, viral contagion, you know, situation reminded me a lot of an early David Cronenberg movie, actually. Rabid.
Ooh.
And it's very much like what the title implies. Like, it's this strain of rabies that's just so horrible
Yeah,
that
very similar.
seconds you go from, like, mild-mannered individual to, like,
Insane
cannibalistic
with
berserker.
rage. Right,
And
yeah.
Yeah. You know, I think I might have seen, I definitely have heard of that movie. I think my mom might have watched it. I feel like, so real quick, my history with this franchise, I have a lot more of a clearer, image in my head of 28 Weeks Later. I think just like as a kid,
Yeah.
I think my mom must have gone through a phase of these kind of zombie movies, because I think she watched that. She watched The Crazies.
Yep, George Romero, another
Crazies.
similar one. Yeah.
And she was
Seen Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead.
and she was watching these movies, and you know, it's all come back to me now. I was a little kid, and I remember my mom didn't want me to watch these movies, like wouldn't let me in the room, but I like creeped my head through the door, and I think I watched most of 28 Weeks Later as a kid, like through a crack in the door.
Yeah, 28 Weeks Later is
Yeah.
it's a departure.
Oh, boy, is it a departure.
Yeah.
I just think it's the one that I saw more of, just because there are more images from that movie burned into my head, certain performances and things. Whereas, like, yeah, I pretty much, as far as with 28 Days Later, I'm pretty sure I remember the first like 30 minutes clearly, but I don't think I saw the rest of it.
Crazy.
Because I remember him getting saved by the Molotov cocktails.
Yeah. Yeah, no, like it's kind of broken into 3 parts. And that's it feels like a true like odyssey, which is another like thing that I've carried into my adulthood. I love a movie that like feels like we've really gone somewhere from the beginning to
Like
the
a
end.
journey, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like a wide variety of environments that we
Yeah,
kind of come
and
across.
people. Like there's main characters we don't meet until like 2/3 into the movie.
Right, yeah.
And also, I'd like to talk about how it's shot. You said that it's not entirely shot on camcorder,
It's
but
not-
it's all got this like crazy, like digital, like super soft, almost like VHS look to it, and it's just gorgeous.
Yeah, I mean,
I used to look at it on my HDTV and think like, man, this movie's ugly. But now, like as I've gotten older, I'm like, this is a beautiful way to like, because this is clearly like a stylistic choice. Because no other movie really looks like this. Like all the lights are kind of blown out a little bit. There's like this bloom around everything and this softness, and the colors all kind of blend together in an interesting way.
most of like the wide, like they're going across the city landscape shots.
Yeah.
Where there's like no people around, or what was filmed on the Canon XL1 digital video camera.
To shoot super quick.
Yeah, because you could just set it up literally. They had a very limited amount of time to be able to get these shots set up, and they needed a camera that could just like go quick.
Yeah.
And record, you know.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Yeah. But at the same time, I was watching a video essay today where they showed clips of an interview with Danny Boyle, and they said that aside from it just being a financial need to film like that, it also added this element of like we wanted to get the sense that like you're watching this almost through like security cam footage, found footage, kind of thing. You know, the news, because a lot of the ways that we would see that's something that I think is the power of certain kind of like found footage films and like movies that use those kind of techniques, is that in the real world, if this thing was happening, it'd be scary to actually be there, but how like people outside of the situation, like in America, we would be seeing it on TV, and we would be seeing it in these like low fidelity formats at this time, and like that's how, you know, almost like looking at war footage, you know, at it, like, in another country, you know,
for sure.
So just like really effective.
It's gorgeous, and there's like an interesting like vibe to this whole movie where it's like it's super surreal at times, like in the action scenes specifically, and the scenes where your adrenaline's supposed to get pumping, the way that's edited. And the sound, some sounds that you think are supposed to be really loud or kind of quiet, and like vice versa. And they'll like do like these double takes where they like show the same shot twice, like really quick in succession, and it has that kind of like disorienting, like in the moment feeling. The whole movie just feels super surreal.
Another thing about that surreality is, again, like the whole John Wyndham-esque cozy apocalypse where there's scenes that are just almost pastoral beauty, like they're going to the English countryside.
This movie can be a feel-good movie sometimes.
In weird, perverse ways.
In the middle.
Super weird.
Absolutely.
Like the real villain of the movie is hopelessness and kind of that grief, because like every single character is just carrying so much pain, but they're finding these like little bright points and like finding people that they can care about. And those parts are for me my favorite parts, because they're just the nice, like the most pleasant.
Well, I think they do a good job of like those really human, like happy moments. Like there's like, you know, the little part where they're the found family. Like the scene I think about the most is like, you know, when they're kind of like camping in the middle of the night on their way somewhere in the countryside, and Cillian Murphy's going to bed, and he says to I forget the character's name. The older guy.
Frank. Yeah.
He says to Brendan Gleeson, to Frank, like, "Night, Dad."
Yeah. He wakes him up from a nightmare. Where he wakes up and like just no one's around. He's alone again. And then Frank wakes him up and says it's just a nightmare, and he says, "Thanks, Dad." You know,
and it's just this little feeling of like, you know, okay, there's a little humanity. There's hope, and then
it's hard to get you to care about characters like this much, like these.
And it's very easy in a lot of these like post-apocalyptic survival movies, where it's just, hey, let's like cram a bunch of like archetypes together, and let's simmer and then increase the tension.
That's Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead is a good like contrast.
I remember Feast.
Like that movie really puts the focus on the actual apocalypse and like the threat, but this movie is focused on the characters and
like
hope in a hopeless situation.
How do you deal with the situation?
It is very much a thing where like we're not really focused necessarily on well, I mean, we do straight up get the origin of the disease, like we know where it comes from at the beginning, but
I think about that every time, how that scene kind of sticks out. Like it kind of just exists to like kind of answer a bunch of questions. Like the opening scene of this movie is that like patient zero.
So we can use this as a way to get into just going into the plot. A group of animal rights activists infiltrate a laboratory in Cambridge. One of the activists frees a chimpanzee, despite being warned by the scientists that is infected with a highly contagious aggression-inducing virus called the rage virus. And the chimp attacks. I think I was watching a video today where they were going through the script, and it said something along the lines of like the chimp jumps out like a bullet. At and there is that sense of like.
From a gun.
Intensity, a bullet from a gun.
It's ironic because it's you'd think that it's not like a terrorist attack. It's like an act of love, or like a misguided act of love that actually starts like them actually trying to come in and save these apes that are being tortured in this lab is what kicks off the apocalypse. Or as far as we know, the apocalypse.
Right.
As far as we know, at least within the structure of this movie. Yeah, I don't know. Morally, I don't necessarily know how. Like, the scientist is warning you. Like, you don't know what you're doing.
Well, the whole reason they're there is out of like animal rights and trying to care for animals.
Yeah, no. They definitely are.
Like, they're dumb, but
Yeah, they're there for the right intentions, for the right reasons, for sure. But yeah,
it's like misguided humanity. Is
Right.
exactly
what actually started everything.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it kind of taps into this whole element of like, in that case, like the man being the true monster. I'm going to keep saying that over and over
Right,
again. It's like,
yeah.
as far as like the self-sabotage element of like, like, yeah, even if people try to do some good, it's still going to ultimately, like we still ultimately want to destroy ourselves,
Yeah.
It's like what these, these movies are deep, guys.
The science, they're like manufacturing a virus that just causes your brain to go. The way he says it is, in order to cure, you must first understand, which is, I guess, it's a little flimsy as to why you'd create a super contagious virus that inflames your brain and makes you go insane with rage. But it answers a lot of questions that so you're not distracted during the rest of the movie.
I mean, it's a thing where it's like it's kind of it's almost like it is almost like you don't necessarily need the scenes, right? Because it isn't. The movie does not harp on or focus on the science or the structure of the disease. Yeah. That's the next movie.
For me, that's the only reason this scene is in the movie, is just to like keep people from asking those questions during the movie.
The rest is just the consequences and the aftermath.
It's like these characters don't matter so much as like this is how it started. There you go.
It's just a means to an end. Exactly. You're welcome.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It is an excuse to have the event that is 28 days later.
After that.
It's a plot device.
I really want to check out, maybe not watch the whole thing, but like I want to check out 28 months after
the asylum.
The asylum
knockoff.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Atlantic Rim.
I don't think it has anything to do like. I think the zombies are like slow undead zombies in that movie.
It's just like a really typical, that scene happens 28 days after the original outbreak. We see bicycle courier Jim, who wakes up in a hospital,
nude for some reason.
He's very nude. We see Oppenheimer's dick, very clearly in this. Well, I mean, it's still low fidelity footage.
Yeah, it's kind of just like a line.
That's why we need the 4K version of the 4K.
So we can see every detail, right?
4K
like AI upscale.
Cillian Murphy wakes up in the hospital. He's roaming around. No one's around.
One of the most like iconic scenes of the movie, the one stuff that went on all the promotion, is him wandering around London.
And again,
he spends the whole day.
That whole scene is just like
it's beautiful.
Oh, it is, and that's why when I watching it again, I'm like, oh my god, this is so Day of the Triffids. But that's a compliment because obviously Alex Garland was reading that novel and he's like, this would make a great movie. We don't need killer plants. We need this.
That's sick. Yeah, no, it's. I was watching it again last night. Full disclosure, I got really high and watched it again.
No, shame on you.
And it was. I was just like, this is such a fucking terrifying concept. Like, you wake up and there's just nobody, and you walk around this city all day. Like, he's there from like sun up to sundown, wandering around this city, and he doesn't see another living soul. And then the first one he sees is he wanders into a church and he finds all these dead bodies and he says hello, and these two guys just like look up at him like slack-jawed with this fucking scary look on their face. That is terrifying.
For sure. There is an element in this opening that I didn't have a problem with it like while I was watching it. It was actually something I didn't think about. But something that when they were making the movie, they were in pre-production, they were talking about, the city's empty, but shouldn't there be dead corpses everywhere? Shouldn't there be bodies around? And Danny Boyle was basically just like, shut up.
Yeah, no, that's
stylistically.
That's what I think. Yeah, I'm like, well, it's also like, how did someone get up there and write the end is extremely fucking nigh, like 20 feet in the air? Like, who cares?
It doesn't necessarily matter. I didn't expect this movie to have the...
There's no traffic. There's no cars on the side of the road. Who cares?
Yeah, no, it's all about the vibe.
Yeah.
And it's something that I didn't necessarily expect in this movie, is that it is way more about the graphic novel, like, in a way.
It's a super vibey movie, and you wouldn't think so.
That sense of desolation and emptiness.
People see this movie and they think zombie movie, and that's not the first thing that I think at all.
No, same.
I think of that road trip of them that we get to later, of them on the road with the beautiful music and like the colors all blown out.
Yeah.
It's a gorgeous movie.
It's a surreal trip at the end of the world.
Yep.
So yeah, Jim, like you said, he goes to that church. He encounters some of the rage zombie. The first rage zombie we see, get a real close look at, is the priest.
Yeah, fodder.
The fodder. Fodder? Okay. Yeah, no, the accent. The accents are.
He's got his Irish accent.
Yeah. He encounters the
Bust through the door. Pastor of the church.
Yeah, bust through the door. More infected chase after him.
I have this whole movie downloaded in my brain, by the way, so
And,
I know like every single detail about it.
He's chasing the streets, but he is rescued via Molotov cocktail because we're in Jolly England and no one has guns.
Yep.
Via Molotov cocktail by Selena and Mark, who are survivors.
Yeah.
And take them to their to refuge down in they go down into the terminal. Subway. And give them a whole laydown on what happens.
Yep. They blow up a gas station, by the way, in a really interesting
Oh yeah,
sequence.
that's true.
It's a really big explosion, and the way it's edited is really interesting too, because there's like the explosion happens and it's not very loud, and then once the plume is in the air, you kind of hear like this giant like loud whoosh. It's just like another example of that like surreal editing. Mm-hmm. That whole explosion has always been weird to me because it felt like my ears were clogged for the first part of it, and then
Well, sorry, go ahead, Rian.
No, I was about to say that there was what I liked about how that scene was edited was also it was like you're watching various like closed circuit security camera, angles of the explosion.
Yeah.
So it gives that clinical sense of like the banality of this big action set piece.
You see like a super wide shot of the city, and you just see the explosion as like this kind of dot. It's super cool.
This whole movie has a very dreamlike feel.
Yeah,
which
it does.
It's something that like I always forget about with.
You wouldn't think.
It's something I forget about with Danny Boyle's filmography, because I was looking at the movies and I was like, oh yeah, it totally makes sense why he would make a zombie movie feel like this, because Slumdog Millionaire, I feel like is the immediate example. I think it's probably the Danny Boyle movie I've seen the most. Has a lot of these like dreamlike qualities, you know, and like turns like the kind of mundane and this like world of like a this like very impoverished environment and turns it into like this beautiful kind of like with all this color and all this life and stuff. And it's funny enough that like I feel like he does kind of a similar thing with the zombie apocalypse here. That,
which you wouldn't think.
It's supposed to be so desolate, but
yet it's like there's parts of it that almost seem nice.
Exactly.
And then it's like it starts super bleak, and then there's a bright point in the middle to show you that there's something to fight for, and then it gets really fucking bleak.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, and this scene also has, I think, the funniest line in the movie, where after waking up in London, in an abandoned London, and then meeting these people who are throwing Molotov cocktails and getting chased by psychos, he goes, "Can you someone please tell me what the fuck is going on?"
I mean, understandably
yeah,
so.
it's such an understandable line.
Yeah, and they give him the lowdown. And I really like Selena's breakdown of like how she kind of explains it, where she's like, everyone thought it was riots at first, and then
it wasn't on the TVs anymore.
Wasn't on the TVs anymore.
Coming through your windows.
Exactly. And Mark talks about this image of like how I think he said how he lost his dad, or whatever. Where
his
like
family, his whole family.
How like he was in this group of infected and he had to climb over the bodies, and this was
he infected like spread through the crowd super fast, which we'll see in the sequel. Firsthand.
Watching this back to back with 28 Weeks Later really was an experience, because we see this exact visual he describes like put to film, and I think it's done really well in the next one. But we'll get to that when we get to that. So they spend the night there. Jim wants to go to his family's home to try to see if his family's alive. The next day, they roll out and we get more shots of an abandoned London. They're walking on the train tracks
with really pretty music.
I always have a hard time when it comes to music and sound design in movies. Usually the second time I watch a movie is when I'm really able to absorb all of that, because like I think first time I'm kind of more focused on what's happening visually. So like any time I don't mention an important sound thing, please. Because the sound and music is very important to this film, and I enjoyed it while I was watching it, but I didn't
catch it the first time around, right?
Yeah, there's a score and a bunch of actual like licensed songs. And they all mesh together super well. Like that "Godspeed You Black Emperor," I think East Hastings. Yeah. It's a great fucking song, and it fits like the building fear of like I'm still not seeing anybody. Like, I'll see someone up here. No, I still haven't seen anybody. And he's walking around all day, and the music is just kind of building and becoming more frantic as that panic would start to set in. And it really like conveys like this isn't like you wouldn't be like bemused. You'd be starting to like really fucking freak out at a certain point.
And it's kind of interesting because Godspeed themselves with that point when their musical career, you could almost describe what they were doing as like soundtracks for the apocalypse. So,
yeah, definitely. That's a really good description of them.
You know, so of course, Dead Flag Blues with that spoken word bit. You know,
Yeah, I love that song.
So that scene, especially the beginning, where Cillian Murphy's just wandering around this deserted London, and Godspeed swelling in the background.
Yeah, it like just creeps in like from silence. It fades in really, really quietly.
Yeah. There's a lot of very effective use of silence in this movie as well. Just something that I think is lost in the next, not just the next one, but I feel like in
films in general.
In films in general, and like a lot of like big budget films in general, Americanized films, like we have a big tendency to over music and like over stimulate.
See the sequel.
Yeah, see the sequel. There's actually, this is a complete tangent, but I was watching a really cool video that was talking about how Studio Ghibli films, when they do the English dubs for those, they do a complete redesign of like the sound of those movies, and it showed this scene side by side from Princess Mononoke, where like the main dude, I forget his name, he's just like it's towards the beginning of the movie, he's just walking through this field and he's just surrounded by nature and like animals and stuff, and in the Japanese version, all that it is the Foley. Like you hear the animals, you hear the sound of his feet stomping, you hear the jingle of like his sword on his side or whatever. And it's like really just kind of bring you into this moment. And then the English version, there's no Foley, and it's just this big orchestral score.
That's
I mean,
lame.
it's obviously the music itself is beautiful, but it doesn't suck you into the world as much.
Yeah, it's an interesting choice. It's like, well, Western audience will get bored by silence.
Exactly. Well, I think that I think the idea is like Americans get bored easily.
Yeah, it's true.
And honestly,
see the sequel.
I think that is a big part of why a lot of people have a tough time watching older movies. I don't think it's the look. I think it really
They're slower.
They're slower paced, and like sound wise, like there is a lot more use of silence and negative space within sound. That just is not commonplace in films anymore.
People had longer attention spans back then.
I
sound like a boomer, but I think it is true.
Not only that, a lot of these directors, a century ago, they were also very literate. They were reading novels. They were reading, these treatises and books.
Kubrick.
So, right, you had literate filmmakers and equally literate audiences. So,
and I don't think that's a thing that's like, I don't think every modern movie, I think smaller films, indie films, like there are a lot of movies that now, I think, honestly, we're seeing a bigger prevalence of like actual tasteful filmmaking come back, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think so too.
But yeah, no, just something I wanted to point out as a thing. My rant on sound in movies. I'm a boomer.
We all
Get off my lawn!
Yeah, you kids don't know good movies. You will watch all your Tic Tacs.
The old fart podcast.
Well, you're not going to have your Tic Tacs in 8 days. Sorry, too soon.
Enjoy them while they last!
Fucking, unless you get a VPN. What's it? What were we at next?
They were going to see Jim's parents.
They were going to see Jim's parents.
Because Jim, they were telling him like, no, our parents are dead. Our families
parents
are dead.
More likely dead.
Your parents are dead, Jim.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, they're not. I'm gonna go see them.
He has to see it for himself.
And they're like, okay, we'll go see your dead parents then. And then they all make the trek.
And then they do, and he finds his dead parents in bed, and there's a really sad
it's
note.
The saddest fucking thing. He goes up the stairs and you can tell he smells them, and then he finds them with pills and wine on the nightstand, and they're holding a picture of him with a note on the back. And, what does it say?
It's like don't wake up, like stay
yeah,
asleep.
It's saying like, Jim, we left you asleep, now we sleep with you. Don't wake up. It's the saddest fucking thing.
So sad.
Yeah, and he cries, and Selena almost tries to like console him, and he's just not. He's like too broken up about it.
Yeah, he's not having
Understandably, Jesus.
Yeah. They decide to stay the night there.
They decide to stay the night there. They have Jim reminisces over memories of his family.
And we get a nice little flashback.
Yeah.
like a frame within a frame. It looks really interesting.
Yeah, a little flashback.
And he's got his candle. And last night, Avery, we had both taken edibles, and Avery had fallen asleep, and I forgot that this part happened somehow. That this is Jim is holding a candle, and we can see from outside that something sees the light within the window. So, and two infected just bust in the room, and it's super loud and jarring, and it woke Avery up and freaked her the hell out.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It is a calm moment that just gets interrupted by once again, that's something I think is really unique about these zombies is like I said, me and
You
Courtney
can forget that they're there for a second.
the last few days we gotten back into The Walking Dead. We watched a few episodes the last few days. And in that show, like, the zombies are, in limited amounts, they are a deal-withable threat. You know, just as far as, like, they're slow, they're dumb. But these guys, like, as soon as, if you see them, it's already going to be, like, an awful, like,
no,
encounter.
and you're in London, no one has guns.
Yeah.
So your choice is, like, maybe you could take one or two, but usually you're just going to run.
Yeah.
I have a pitch for a 28 Days Later video game that I'll tell you about later that we'll probably cut out. But I do. I was thinking about it all day yesterday.
Unfiltered. We'll let it ride. Yeah, no. But, fucking, what's it called? Yeah, so they, fending him off, Mark is wounded. Before the infection can take hold, Selena immediately hacks Mark to death in front of horrified Jim. Because, it just takes over so quick. And at this point, Selena also tells him that, like, I'll take you out in a second. Yeah. If
In a heartbeat.
In a heartbeat, if it happens to you, which comes back later.
That's the name of the most famous track that's overused in the sequel.
Yep. Spotting a makeshift signal from afar, Jim and Selena make their way up to the Balfron Tower. They encounter a cab driver, Frank, and his daughter, Hannah, in one of the apartments. Yep. Frank shows them a military broadcast offering protection and a blockade in Manchester. So, yeah, they meet this, like, little dad and daughter kind of...
They get chased up the stairs. And
they have to drive from south in London all the way north to Manchester.
Yeah. Yeah, they...
Hence the road trip, aspect.
Yeah, Frank is like, he shows them like genuinely kindness. Like I wish Frank was my dad. He's like the nicest fucking guy.
Yeah, super cool dude.
And
he only cares about his daughter. It's a thing where like I like the scene where they're on the roof kind of talking about it, and something I really appreciate. He kind of puts it bluntly, where like he's like, "I heard you
need you more. Yeah.
We do need you more. I heard you guys talking about us. Like you are correct. Let's be honest." And I really love that level of like no bullshit clarity kind of thing that like I feel like
he's the most lovable character in any fucking movie.
Yeah. It's something that like is very much not a movie character thing to do, because in like
we do.
in the second movie there's some movie character decisions.
They're all very movie character.
Where people are some like in a movie, quote unquote, like fucking Jim would be like, "Oh, we have to like kill these fuckers. They don't trust us or whatever,
Yeah.
But yeah, no, they make their way after the rooftop. There's a really scary scene. Probably like a scene that took me off guard and that like sticks in my head from this movie is when they're in this. I think it's a cab.
Yeah,
and
they got a radio transmission, by the way, that's saying that soldiers had set up a blockade.
And some
the answer
sort of
to
base.
Infection was somewhere. Was in Manchester.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes,
that's where they're going.
They go through a tunnel, and there's
a really scary moment.
Yeah, it's a really scary moment. There's all this destroyed cars and like debris in the way, and Jim just says, "Fuck it."
This is probably the dumbest decision in the whole movie, where Frank is like, well,
Frank, not Jim.
We have like a limited amount of gas, and I really just want to get out of the city. So we could either like turn around and go, like the first bad decision is going in the tunnel to begin with. The second bad decision is seeing this pile of smashed cars and deciding to drive over them, which like Jim is blatantly yelling at him that this is a bad idea, but he's just like, "Fuck it, we gotta get out of the city."
Well, I mean, Frank is desperate. He just sees it as like, it's either this or my daughter dies.
Yeah.
So like, he's kind of this madman. And honestly, at this point, I thought that like it was gonna be. I mean, it kind of becomes a factor later, but like I thought that like this is gonna become a bigger problem later for Frank, and they're like, okay, Frank can be kind of a loose cannon.
Yeah.
So maybe this will play into it, which really doesn't.
No, not really.
It ends up getting snuffed out a little bit, but you know.
But they're driving over these cars and they're like giggling and having a fun time too, which is something you wouldn't expect.
Yeah, no, I mean, because they're making it, they're like, "Oh shit, this is working."
This is actually kind of fun. Yeah,
and it is one of those moments that like, we get a little bit of there's a surprising amount of like little moments of levity in this, and I feel like it's I don't know, it's kind of a British thing, I guess, where it's like they're not afraid to mess around with like different tones.
It's not just it's not trying to, because like the situation alone and the amount of grief you've seen that these people, like, because they've also, like, Hannah lost her mom, Frank lost his wife, everyone's lost somebody dear to them. So the situation alone is enough to keep the tone kind of dour. So you get these, like, I think I see it as the whole point of the movie is these little sparks of joy that you get from like, there's like, humans have an ability to find hope anywhere.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, they make it through the blockade, but the car, I forget, it's like the car,
it busts a tire.
It busts a tire, right? It busts a tire. They're stuck in the tunnel, and we hear some infected coming. But I forget exactly how they got it. Like they just stop they just get it in time.
They stop it, and they have Hannah change the tire, and all these rats start running.
Yes, and
they run past Hannah and like over top of her while she's on the ground, and they're like, oh shit, they're running from infected.
Yeah.
So the infected are closing in on them while they're trying to, like, they're all lifting up the car so she can switch the tire, and they get in the car just in time and get away. It's really fun.
And get away,
It's fucking scary though.
Spooky moment.
Yeah.
The group travels to Manchester. Wow, this skips their little. The Wikipedia skips their little camping in the countryside.
They did, they skipped a couple things. My favorite scene of them stopping at the grocery store that's still fully stocked.
It doesn't mention that at all. Oh my god!
They play AM 180 by Granddaddy, and it's like a perfect little scene of them just having a good time as like a found family, just picking what they want to take. It's great.
Yeah, I remember there's a funny little line where, like, Selena tells Jim, like, only take what we don't have to cook or whatever, or like what you can eat uncooked, and Jim's like, I think you can eat this raw.
I think you can eat that raw. Yeah, it's great. And like Frank is picking out all these whiskeys and trying to talk to Jim, and then Jim kind of gets bored and walks away before he realizes. Yeah, it's like the most. It's stark because it's like the first scene of any kind of happiness anybody has in the whole movie. And it's like night and day from what we've seen so far, and it's like, maybe it's not all bad, maybe you can find something.
Maybe you can eke out some sort of existence out of all this.
Maybe there's hope. This is the hope section of the movie.
It is, and it's the most memorable section for me.
Absolutely. And it gets fucking squandered.
Yeah, they stop
very
the camp
quickly.
Yeah.
Yep. They get to the Manchester camp.
Yeah, they skip a lot. They skipped the kid Jim kills. They stop at like a roadside stop, and Jim kind of goes inside to get gas out of like a tanker truck. And Jim goes inside to see if if he can find anything, and he gets attacked by this little boy infected, and he's got to kill him with a baseball bat. And that comes up later. That's a main plot point. It's interesting. Right. It's not in the Wikipedia.
Yeah.
And then another memorable scene is they camp out in the countryside, and they see a family of uninfected horses that are running around. And it's this beautiful scene where like they're all looking, and then the rest of them walk away, and Frank blows them a kiss. It's like super nice. And that's when Jim high on Valium calls him dad. Yeah,
it's just like a nice like little sweet moment, because like Frank clearly like kind of takes it hard, is like, oh okay, like there's still humanity left.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, they make it to the blockade. The blockade is deserted and destroyed. And immediately Frank, who just a second ago was all chip cheery dad,
he's like, now where's my hope? Like, and he falls into despair for a second, and he kind of loses his temper and snaps at Selena.
Yeah, no, like he really just starts losing. And this is
as soon as he loses hope.
This is why I thought that, like, I feel like if Frank didn't get infected at this point in the movie, like a direction you could have taken it is Frank kind of losing it, because I feel like
like The Shining or something.
He just starts losing his mind, starts like really just kind of getting to him. I could definitely see that plot line going that way, but instead there's
the second he loses hope, he's punished for it.
Exactly. There's a dead hanging body,
but that was also kind of a I'm sorry, I'll let you
go ahead. No,
it's it's interesting because he sees a crow eating a dead body, and he just wants to shoo the crow away from the body, and it's another like small little act of love that does this to him, because he kicks this fence that it's on, and the drop falls in his eye, just trying to get this, like, out of just like a little bit of respect for the dead.
Exactly. and then one little drop of blood that drops in his eye
infects him in like 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And he has enough time to tell his daughter that he loves her and push her away from him. And it's another like gut-wrenching scene in this movie.
Yeah, it's real harsh.
Yeah.
Yeah, immediately the vibes get bad. Soldiers arrive on scene just in time to shoot Frank dead. The soldiers bring Jim, Selena, and Hannah to their fortified mansion under the command of Major Henry West, the Ninth Doctor himself. Immediately things aren't great at this little compound area.
And again, going back to plot points from Day of the Triffids, this is one of them.
That's interesting.
Yep. No, like Garland literally was reading
it's an adaptation. That's cool.
They just, again, replaced hyper-intelligent killer plants and legions of the blind with rage-infected berserkers.
That's cool.
But everything else, yep. Very intelligent adaptation.
The same deal. But yeah, no, they're here with these soldiers, and immediately you can tell things are. I mean,
there's something weird here.
The first thing is,
what are there like 12 guys here? Like, what is this really? What we made this trip for?
There's a handful of soldiers. They're all like really weird and rude. They're doing donuts with the taxi cab.
Yeah,
in like the
they're all
courtyard.
Super macho machismo guys.
Yeah, no, and like it's immediately their attitude is just like very off.
Yeah. They're the ones who kill Frank too, and they
yeah. Let's see. Basically, we're kind of skipping over. We get I forget exactly how we get to it, but eventually they're all having dinner, and there's some like they start making some weird insinuations about the women.
Yeah, they're
like do you know like he asks Selena like do you know how to cook or whatever.
Can't believe how badly we need someone with a little flair in the kitchen is what they say, and that's like that's a dog whistle.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah. This is after, by the way, we meet Mailer, which is an infected that they've chained up in the back to learn something from, apparently, which is essentially, he says, like, I've learned that there's that he does this like little speech about how Mailer, like, this infected has no future anymore.
Yeah.
And there's like all I'm really learning from it is how long it's going to take for these things to starve to death.
Yeah.
Like, it's really just confirmed the fact that if you get infected, it's just over.
Yeah.
Right.
That's kind of like what he's banking on. And Christopher Eccleston here, he's a really interesting character to me because as far as like how do I put it? So like to get into like what is actually happening, like it gets revealed. Like he tells Jim, he reveals to Jim that like the broadcast was intended to, according to Wikipedia, to lure female survivors into sexual slavery. So like he promised his soldiers, his men or whatever, that like his soldiers were freaking out, losing hope, gonna go crazy because like what is it? There's no future. There's no
future. We there's no children. There's no future.
And like loosely, like basically Doctor Who says like with women they have a future, which really is just at the end of the day it's like okay they want to fuck.
It's like this super like pragmatic. Like he's really just trying to keep his people having hope.
Yeah.
As best he can by giving them what they seem to need
in the most base level possible.
Yeah, and it's the most like uncaring, pragmatic. Like it's really just like the way I think it was some interview I think with Christopher Eccleston where he says Jim is the heart and the Major is the brain. Mm-hmm. Like he's like this super like cold and calculating guy.
Yeah.
Who's just like, this is how we establish a future. I get these men, women, and that way we can reproduce.
And it's a thing where it's like it doesn't come from his like it doesn't seem that I'm gonna keep calling him Doctor Who. It seems like Doctor Who, his whole like he doesn't have within himself this like need to rape and pillage necessarily.
No, yeah.
At least not at this point in the story,
right?
But it's literally just like
I'm responsible for these men.
Yeah, I'm doing this to keep us in control. I'm doing this to like give us an order, even though it's a fucked up order. It's still an order, you know.
Things get super once Frank dies. This movie gets super bleak until the very end.
No, just super creepy character, super creepy concept. Like, and then once the veil is off and they kind of reveal who they are immediately, like like they start talking about like which like openly like I'm gonna have you, I'm gonna have the black one.
Yeah, and pretty much right when that's revealed, what's Farrell I think is the I think he's Irish or Scottish.
He's Scottish.
Yeah, he's like the one good soldier who like doesn't like this whole thing, and he kind of speaks up about it. So he gets locked up, and Jim gets locked up for trying to.
And then he also reveals a plot point
Yeah.
that becomes very crucial.
He does this really good like super manic speech about like they've all gone fucking nuts. Like, what do you think would happen if a disease that can be spread through the spit and blood has to be direct transmission from person to person happens on a little island like this?
They're
going to quarantine
the
it.
entirety of the United Kingdom.
So it's like it's not the world that's ended; it's just England that's infected. And like and I think Cord even said like the whole audience is like, is that actually true? Like that's crazy.
Yeah.
And like Jim like looks and he's like you saying quarantine? But yeah, they take them out to get shot. They take them out to execute them.
Yeah, take him out to get shot. Jim gets away. There's a pretty good, like, the soldiers are distracted and he hides amongst like all these corpses.
And he jumps the wall.
Trips
and falls and lays on his back and looks up, and what does he see? An airplane.
Oh shit.
Yep.
So there is actually
there's
hope
more
the
hope than
vapor
you even
trails
thought.
of a passing aircraft, right?
As bad as the situation seemed, it wasn't nearly as bad as you thought. It's still bad, but the world isn't over.
Exactly. But yeah, Jim. Let's see. Yeah, there's a scene where the girls, basically Selena, gets Hannah to take a bunch of Vicodin, so that she like doesn't feel
She's doped up for the rest of the movie,
Pretty much.
Later, are you stoned?
Yeah.
Stoned?
Are you stoned?
Are you stoned?
Neither of us could do the accent.
But yeah, she's like, well, Jim sees a jet contrail after
he kicks off the alarm at the checkpoint, draws them all out, and has his own little badass moment where he kind of takes them out one by one, like Rambo somehow.
I was just thinking that too.
No, he's running around shirtless, just like basically taking out soldiers.
And it's interesting because for this part where he's coming to rescue them, he's kind of embracing like this animalistic side of himself, which is, I'm not really sure what it's trying to say, but it is interesting.
Well, I feel like it's all about like there's a thing of like there's a balance between like surviving and living.
Yeah.
Right.
As far as like in order to survive a situation, you gotta like let some of the demon out, like let the animal take over a little
he
bit.
does too.
You have to become a monster to deal with monsters.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's this shot where he's hiding to like jump out and kill this soldier, and the camera just kind of pans over his face and his like eyes are rolled back in his head, and he looks like a monster. Like he looks infected.
Yeah, he's really
shirtless.
To the point where when he comes up upon Selena and like it's just them two, she thinks for a second that he's infected. She's about to hit him.
Yeah, and then it pays off.
And then he comes into the light and he's clearly not.
Yeah.
And he's like, that was
longer than a heartbeat. It's the best line. I fucking love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's after he gets in the mansion and lets Mailer loose, and there's just this long montage of the infection spreading through
the soldiers getting infected real quick.
Pretty much wipes out the whole squad.
Immediately. And doesn't Christopher Eccleston doesn't he have a fucked up death? Don't they?
Yeah. So they get out to the car after pretty much everyone's dead, and Mailer and like the other infected are kind of running around in the mansion. They manage to get to the car, and he's Major, right? He's waiting for them in the car, and he shoots Jim. So Hannah, who's in the driver's seat, kind of backs up the car and express delivers him to Mailer.
Oh yeah,
who kind of smashes in the back window and drags him out and kills him, which is perfect because he's the one who said Mailer didn't have a future, but Mailer's future was killing him.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And then they drive away, and the gate is chained up, and they kind of just tell Hannah just to gun it and go through the gate, and then we freeze frame as they hit the gate. And this is where there was an alternate ending.
Yes, there was. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Tell me about this alternate ending. I know nothing about it.
From what I remember, Jim dies, and you can see footage of like, because like they hit the gate and it says 28 days later, and then it's a dream sequence of what happened right after that. They get to like an abandoned hospital or something, and Selena's a registered pharmacist, so she's like saving him. But in the original, Jim dies. I think is that's it, right? He just dies in the hospital.
In the hospital, and Hannah and Selena just kind of tearfully wander out.
Yeah, and it's like, what does that that ending would not have supported the theme at all.
No.
It would have been a completely different meaning to the whole movie if that had been the ending.
There are 3 alternate endings.
Yeah, there was another one where I think one of them gets infected, and I think Jim. They find this like doctor guy. There's a real reason they never even shot anything for it because it's kind of a bad ending. But Jim sacrifices himself and does like a full blood transfusion with either Selena or Hannah, and he ends up infected. But it's like, how do you do like a full blood transfusion
in order to save Frank?
When like a single drop of blood? Yeah, it was Frank. When like a single drop of blood can change you, how do you like? I think it was Alex Garland. It was I watched like the special features on the DVD and shit as a kid. He was like, "What are you gonna do? Like run bleach through their veins to make sure you got it all before you actually like."
Right.
It doesn't work, and it also just doesn't really fit the theme. It's a self-sacrifice, but he kind of like there's already kind of some sacrifice in the story. I think the ending they went with is the best possible ending.
Yeah, no. So another 28 days later, in which case it should be 56 days later, Jim recovers at a remote cottage in Cumbria, where the infected are shown lying openly in the roads, dying of starvation.
Yep.
Which
makes this like a very self-contained movie. You would think like
it kind of wraps up in a bow in terms of
it needed no sequel, but we got one.
Yeah,
and we're getting another one.
And we're getting another one, right?
Yeah.
Another one from the original squad. They have a huge cloth banner spelling out "Hello," and I remember when we were watching it, like, why the fuck did they do?
You
SOS?
were like, why not SOS? And I'm like, because Hello is nicer. I don't know.
Hello is nice, but it's also like, man, they had to make these big fucking fabric.
Yeah, man, for me, it's the same as like, why are there no cars on the road? It's just it fits the tone of like humans finding other humans.
Yeah, no,
it doesn't. SOS is like, come help us. Hello is like,
hey,
hello.
we're here.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't knock the movie down for me. It's just me cinema sins.
Bing.
But yeah, no, that's it. Happy ending.
We have these beautiful shots of them smiling in the field, and that's how the movie ends.
This jet flying over.
Yep. There's hope, and having the hope paid off.
A surprisingly like positive movie.
Yeah.
For the subject matter.
Yeah, it gets super dark and super happy. It's like the full range.
But yeah, no. Overall, after this viewing the other day, which I letterbox both of these as my first time viewing, just because I really didn't remember anything with this. Yeah, no, this is just like a really strong, movie about what humans do in this situation, and I think the mechanic of the fact that you become infected so quickly is what's unique to this universe.
Yeah, I think so
and
too.
There's like an air of like intensity where like I'm really looking forward to seeing how they're going to utilize these specific creatures and like how they work in the new film.
Yeah.
And how that's going to fit into because the world in the new film, something that's
seems like it's going to be a very different movie.
Exactly. Like, 28 years later, the world is in such a vastly different place than it is in these first two films.
I see like that, the village from Last of Us Part 2.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of just trying to rebuild from the old society.
Yeah. It's going to be real interesting.
Tribal stage.
Yeah. But no, 28 Days Later, fucking great.
I love it.
Love it. Now, let's talk about the sequel. Came out,
which is a fun movie.
Oh boy, is it
6 years later, not 28 weeks later, is a 2007 post-apocalyptic horror film directed by Juan Carlos Fresnadillo, who co-wrote the screenplay with Rowan
bunch of other people.
It serves as a standalone sequel to 28 Days Later and is the second installment in the overall film franchise of the same name. Now I'm pretty sure Alex Garland and Danny Boyle were still involved. I think, were they producers?
Maybe.
No, they're not listed as producers.
The first movie, I think, Rion, you said it has like this strong identity of the early 2000s. Like this like super like indie.
Late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, and this movie feels like a big Hollywood blockbuster zombie movie, which it is.
According to Wikipedia, Danny Boyle served as executive producer. He was busy filming Sunshine. He was out in space. While these boys were down here.
Another good one.
Down here on Earth. But yeah, no, pretty much, yeah, exactly what you guys said. This is very clearly like the more Americanized, more like it's very of its 28 Days Later. I feel like you could almost it has like the 28 Days Later has almost like this timeless quality where like watching it, I'm like, this could have come out in the 80s or the 90s, like kind of. Whereas like this movie is very clearly like
the way it's shot and the music and everything, it's very 2000s.
It's the mid 2000s. Like the color grading just down to like every. It feels like the first Transformers movie or something where it's like and I think an element of it too is how a big marker of like those mid 2000s movies is the military having the American military having like a heavy presence.
Yeah.
Because in this, like immediately after 9/11, like you just see that all over.
We have shifted focus, and now the genres and like capital letters of horror action.
Right.
R-rated horror action movie.
Just like straight up. Yeah, and we already kind of talked a little bit about like our history of this movie, but I wanted to ask y'all just real quick. So, like, your first time seeing this, how long after seeing 28 Days did you watch this one, Joseph?
I think,
and, like, Rian, when did you see it?
I think we rented it, like, right after.
Unlike the first one, which I enthusiastically saw in theaters, this one, I was like, why do we need a sequel? It had such a perfect ending.
It's a very valid point.
I think I saw it at a friend's house. It was one of those like, hey, you want to come over and watch some movies? And there it was in the background. I'm like,
it's a zombie movie.
Right. Yeah. That's how it's like, oh, it's a zombie movie.
It doesn't have the heart. It kind of tries here and there to like
occasionally go for pathos, but it just doesn't work.
This movie's kind of broken into two parts instead of the three, where it's like we have the character stuff and the drama stuff here at the opening. And then at this inciting incident, like 20, 30 minutes into the movie, we're going to put our foot on the gas until the very end. And you're just going to get zombie action with violence and, all kinds of crazy shit happening.
Yeah.
With one specific scene standing out in my mind every time I think of this movie.
Same.
It jumps the shark.
We were saying while we were watching it, kind of a similar mentality, like, something it makes sense. This is very much the Aliens to Alien of this franchise.
Let's make a crowd pleaser of a sequel to this.
Exactly. And I mean, it does make sense just as far as like, you have this very successful indie darling, this new IP that has, all these opportunities to do interesting things, and like, we're gonna make something that's more of a crowd pleaser, more of like a popcorn. Like we said, there's films and there's movies.
Yep.
And this is a movie for sure. But yeah, no, this is the one, like I said, I remembered the most. I feel like before we get into the movie itself, I do want to say something that is kind of it might be a double-edged sword because we were mentioning it. I do like the fact that we're kind of going into the
lore.
We're introducing more elements into like facets of the virus. Like the biggest thing,
how it works,
and the biggest thing that's introduced in this movie. To me, that is something that I do think they're going to bring back and explore in the new film, and it gets explored in comic spin-offs of this franchise, is the fact that we have carriers and like immune people, like people who...
Immune people are still carriers.
Yeah, immune people are still carriers. They can still infect people with the rage virus, and it's something that I feel like has a lot of potential to have an interesting place in the next film.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to see where they take, because I think they utilize that element of it well in this film.
Yeah, this movie is definitely way more focused on the actual like nuts and bolts zombies.
Yeah,
like it's a capital Z zombie movie. Like the first movie is focused on humanity and the people and the survivors, and this movie is focused on look at the scary monsters. Look how scary this movie is.
The characters in this movie are definitely not as not only do we not hang out with them as long, they're definitely written worse.
They're not as interesting. Yeah, not nearly.
Again, going back to archetypes. Like,
yeah.
Not nearly. I mean, not to say that the lead does a bad job, but we'll get to it.
I think the first half of this, we'll start talking about the plot right now. So during the initial outbreak of the rage virus, Don, played by Robert Carlyle, and his wife Alice, and former survivors hide in a cottage in the outskirts of London. And I do really like this opening. It kind of sets us up in like, there are some survivors who are hiding out together in this house. Yeah. All the windows are blocked up. It's like super dark, and immediately you can tell like, oh, this ain't Danny Boyle.
Nope. No. This is not shot in the same way. The footage doesn't look the same at all.
Yeah.
It's like which is I respect them not just trying to ape the style of the first movie at least.
Mm-hmm. Dawn and his wife Alice are talking about in this opening an important fact. We set up their kids,
Yeah.
and how like they what is it?
They're on a school trip.
They're on a school trip somewhere, and they don't know if their kids are or
Yeah.
well, actually, they think that their kids are safe.
Yeah.
And that like they're assuming that, well, thank God they're not around here because this is where
Yeah.
this bullshit's happening.
Pretty much.
Yeah, so they're stuck in here. They hear a terrified boy pounding at their door, and Dawn lets him in.
Yep.
Minutes later, infected people have followed the boy. And they get ransacked. Everything gets fucked up. And I think
It's a really scary scene because like it flips from kind of safe to oh shit, everyone's fucking dead in like a span of like a couple minutes.
exactly. And something I want to point out as well here that I think is done effectively here that other movies in this era are known for and I hate. Fucking shaky cam.
Oh my god,
Man.
it is
Yeah.
a nightmare in this movie too.
Here's the thing. In my personal opinion, I think the shaky cam is used effectively for the most part in this film.
Yeah, I guess it fits the kind of personality of the monster of just this like frantic manic thing chasing you.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think the main fear factor for the zombies in this franchise is the speed of everything about it, like how quickly you turn, how quickly they'll get to you.
Yeah.
So yeah, that like adrenaline. I can see why they did it. It just is kind of still a headache to look at.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
It definitely is something where like it's yeah, it can give you that like stomach ache kind of thing. I don't know. For me, it's not as bad as something like I mentioned while we were watching the Bourne movies. Like do it
Yeah.
too much, but it's probably I don't know. I think it works well with the monster in this film. I think this is a cool opening where Dawn is basically like fighting off some of the zombies and he's running away.
Yeah.
He's pretty much the only one who makes it. He leaves his
Yeah,
wife.
he is. It's like the main source of his tension is he kind of abandons his wife.
Yeah, like somewhat. And
Like it would like in the situation, it absolutely seems like if he would have gone back to her, he would have died.
Died, right.
So he made the logical decision, but that guilt is definitely there.
yeah,
She was not cool with it at the time either.
it
like
makes
you can
sense-
see,
It makes sense that he blames himself. It makes
Yeah.
sense that his kids are mad at him
and
about
it makes sense that he did it too.
Yeah,
So it's effective.
I think that Don and his relationship with his family and stuff, I think that's the strongest character elements in
Yeah.
in this movie, which it really only matters for the first half.
No, yeah, and then he's just like a boogeyman for the rest of the
Right,
movie.
right.
And then it becomes COD zombies in the movie.
Yeah, but yeah, this where he gets in the boat and like the last survivor kind of gets eaten, and it's just kind of him. And he this is like the first sign that this movie is going to be pretty different from the first one because he uses the trolling motor on the back of the boat to like grind up some zombies
Yeah.
underwater, and I'm like, all right, well that's not something that would have been in the original.
Right.
This movie seems very interested in the gore of it all.
Yeah, it's more gory. It's very much more effects heavy. There's a big.
This is a very gory movie.
yeah. It gets like super.
According to marketing analysis, the gorehounds in the audience don't want human interest. Vince.
They really just want to see zombies get cut up and fucked up and stuff.
Pretty
Sometimes
much.
get fucked up. And sometimes it's cool and fun.
And another time that we'll talk about later, it's really, really stupid.
Yeah, I think the element of it, it's like I don't know. It automatically makes a movie like this less rewatchable.
Yeah.
Like I definitely do want to rewatch 28 Days Later soon, but I won't be rewatching 28 Weeks
I
Later.
like needed to watch it again last night because I was thinking about it like all day yesterday.
Yeah, it's one of those where it's like it has some interesting stuff, but yeah. So basically, yeah, we get this opening, and then we skip to 28 Weeks Later.
Yeah.
And we basically get a little update where I forget if it's done through like news clips or whatever.
It's done through text on the screen, which is like over like just footage of the city, I think.
Yeah. And basically, yeah, most of the infected have died from starvation. NATO forces take control of Britain 28 weeks after the outbreak. The U.S. military brings in settlers and refugees back into Britain. They're bringing people back, which already off the bat, it's like, y'all don't want to wait a little longer.
There's a few problems here. The first of which for me is like, it makes a lot of sense that they just all starve at the end of the first one, but I guess we needed a sequel, so...
Right.
But I guess as far as we know, all the infected are dead, but they're still being somewhat cautious, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, there's no. I think the main reason that they have this safe zone, or at least the military, what they say, is that we haven't cleared out the corpses, the body. Like there's a general biohazard, like thing, and also like
right.
And
if you
even
trip and fall mouth first on a corpse, you're probably gonna.
Yeah, I mean, not only would you get sick, but like you can still get infected from dead people.
Yeah, we this infection probably isn't going to be gone. But my second problem is we're going to go ahead and put every single survivor we can in close proximity, like in a city,
right?
Like the literal densest place a person can live.
Mm-hmm.
And with this virus that pretty much travels in relation to how close together people are.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just kind of goofy. I was like, maybe it would have made more sense to have like multiple different camps that you'd put people in. So if one gets compromised, all of England isn't fucked.
Right.
I think an interesting conversation you can have about this with this movie that I'm just kind of realizing now. Any disease contagion movie hits so different in a post-COVID.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh
like,
yeah.
In terms of like we in the year of our Lord 2024. Have thought a lot more and have gone through a lot more of the of like what would actually happen if like there's a big disease and we have to quarantine from each other and stuff, to the point where like we have the experience to be able to critique these movies a lot more.
We were watching and some characters did some stupid shit and you were like, what the hell, why would they do that? And then we think like, oh wait, people
did do that.
People actually didn't give a fuck in the real situation.
There's movies stupid and then there's real life stupid.
Yeah, and they're kind of the same thing sometimes,
unfortunately. But yeah, no, so it's just that like I feel like that's a thing where like we wouldn't think as much about kind of how dumb the military's plan is in a pre-COVID in pre-2020. But yeah, no, still doesn't make any fucking sense. We're introduced to
Jeremy Renner.
We're introduced to the soldiers who they're the snipers who are.
We got Americans, boys.
We got Americans, mainly played by Jeremy Renner, which in my head canon this is the Hawkeye origin story.
He's just fine after that.
Him and his friend played by I forget the actor's name, but he's Michael from Lost.
Yeah.
Flint. Harold Perrineau.
He's not really much of a character in this.
No, he's just like...
No one really is, to be honest.
Yeah. We get introduced to, Jeremy Renner.
And I was thinking, this woman, I can't remember her name.
Rose Byrne's.
Yeah, Rose Byrne's character.
Scarlett.
Rose Byrne's character.
She doesn't even have a last name.
She's a medical officer, and she's just kind of the nice lady who's like checking everybody in.
Right.
She has no arc whatsoever in this movie.
No.
Zero.
No, it's just like she knows.
It's like no one even thought about it.
Her whole character exists for like to what's it called? To give exposition on like these kids might be immune.
I'm here to
we
help.
Gotta keep them alive.
I'm a nice person.
Yeah, like Rion, like you said, we've fallen into archetypes. Yeah, like
right.
Yep.
All the characters in here pretty much exist to be like, ooh, how are you gonna die?
Yeah.
That's basically it. That's like the difference between a movie like 28 or film like 28 days later and then 28 weeks later, where
the
it's
movie is a lot dumber.
Yeah, and it thinks its audience is much dumber. So
yeah, it sure does.
Mm-hmm. So we get introduced to the kids, Tammy and Andy. Tammy and Andy.
Tammy.
They get brought back and they're reunited with their father, Don.
Yeah.
Trying to get to Emily Rivals or Don Alice's
now
children.
the caretaker of this tower block.
Yeah. And Don is the caretaker. He's pretty much the maintenance man, janitor. So he gets some like privileges, like he gets a nice apartment.
Yeah, he's got like security stuff that like is kind of just there to explain how the inciting incident can even happen later.
Exactly. Like that's pretty much the only reason that
just how he can open a door later. That's pretty much it.
I'm sure that was a thing that they were thinking like, how the fuck is he gonna get in there?
Yeah.
Like I'm sure that was in the writer's room.
How do we set this up?
Yeah, exactly.
They're hanging out in District 1. They
we want to see our old house.
We want to go see our old house, but it's outside of the safe zone.
Yep.
These kids break out fucking easily.
Yeah, they just sneak past some soldiers and ride around on a Vespa.
They do these Spy Kid, stunts. Like, we're going to crawl across this drawbridge.
And here's where they, like, almost try to recreate the empty London from the first movie, as well as, like, those, like, beautiful... My favorite shots in the first movie of just the car kind of going down the empty freeway with, like, the windmills in the background and, like, all these just beautiful colors, and... They kind of try to catch the same vibe here, but the problem is we don't give a fuck about these kids.
Right.
And also they're doing something stupid. They're not like trying to do, like they're literally just like being foolhardy right now. And the movie hasn't really earned like. In the first movie, it's like, oh my God, London's empty. What the hell happened? Yeah, and in this one, it's like we know what happened, so it's just kind of like we're just kind of spending time doing this.
Yeah, this teenage Natasha Kinski and this Dakota Fanning lookalike Muppet.
Yeah, just riding around on a Vespa.
I'm like, what?
Yeah, no, it really. In the first movie, all of these like big scenes are supposed to kind of represent like these scenes of the landscape of London are supposed to give you this feeling of like kind of isolation and like it put you in the head of Jim in the first movie, whereas like this is very clearly like, oh, remember these shots from the
it's trying
member berries, right?
It like for the first part of this movie it's trying to like capture that emotionality of the first one and failing, and then it just kind of gives up and says, well, here you fucking go, here's your zombie
artistry
stuff.
here's the zombies.
They make it back to their house and they find their mother, Alice,
who's alive,
but she's
after their dad told them that she was dead.
Yep, and she's kind of gone feral. She's been out in the world too long.
'Cause she's, spoiler alert, half infected. So her mind's kind of, sort of, maybe a little bit gone.
Well, this says semi-conscious state before. I mean, I never took that as her being infected. I just took like her behavior as like
she's also been through some shit.
She's been eating cockroaches.
It's been 28. It's been 28 weeks. She somehow made it to London from out in the country.
Yeah.
God knows how.
The last proper meal she had was a Pomeranian.
Yeah, she's been living up here in her attic, in her old attic, and there's maggots in the food.
Because she's able to say some words to like to what's her name, to Scarlet.
Yeah, she can talk. I figured, I always read it as like the virus might have changed her brain like a little bit. Like, because that's really all the virus does is like it makes your eyes red and it makes you puke and it makes your brain just turn all to rage.
Mini rage.
Yeah. A
little bit of rage.
But she has a reason to be angry.
She does have a reason to be angry because, she, from her perspective, I mean, Dawn technically did abandon her, thinking there was no hope. She gets brought back to the lab or whatever. They test her blood. She's immune. The kids are mad at Dawn because they're like, you lied to us. You saw her die.
And then Dawn is a super genius and lets himself into where she's being held.
And there's no guards.
And then he open mouth kisses her for some fucking like a complete dipshit who hasn't been through everything this character's been through. And he gets infected.
He gets infected really quickly. And for me personally, he's
patient zero.
He's patient zero, and this is where the movie kind of peaks for me as far as like I think that the makeup and the performances of like the infected in Robert Carlyle specifically and in this section,
there's a lot more focus on it.
Like it's really disturbing. He kills her in a really gruesome way. He fucking Game of Thrones her eyes out,
which is something which is I feel like a callback to Jim killing Mitchell in the first one.
Yeah,
because he kills him in the same way of like the thumbs in the eyes.
This reminds me of Rutger Hauer and Blade Runner too.
Yeah.
No, a lot of attention on the eyes for sure.
Ocular damage.
There's so much more blood in this movie than there is in the first one. It's crazy.
Super gory.
And like all the zombies are covered in blood too, which isn't even necessarily true about the first one. There's just a lot of focus on blood.
Yeah.
Which it's fun.
It's what they're here for.
It's okay time. And we get this scene where all the survivors, so immediately kind of goes code red. And
Idris Elba's here, by the way.
Oh yeah, Idris Elba's here for 2 seconds.
Not really. Yeah,
he just walks in wearing uniform, says some lines.
He kind of disappears halfway through the movie.
He's an American soldier for some reason. He's in charge of the whole thing.
Yep.
And he pretty much gives the word like, we're gonna just pretty much kill everybody here.
Oh well, it's compromised.
Yeah. We failed. Didn't work.
We get that scene, your favorite scene, where they're locked in the
they're locked
parking garage.
They're locked in like this big parking garage, this like warehouse building. And Dawn is kind of making his way through the soldiers. Like
everyone's starting to panic.
And then the infected breaks into the room and like,
there's something in the garage.
Yeah.
There's something in the fucking wall.
It's a really effective like tension building because you have all these people in close proximity, and they chain up the doors, and they're like, "Why are you locking us in?" It's like, "It's for your protection," and they slam the door. It's like, "Are you locking?" Everyone's kind of starting to freak out, and so that's already a scary, anxiety-inducing situation.
Yeah, just like being, it's you can't
Everyone's
go
kind of
anywhere.
pressing against each other and
Packed like sardines.
And now all of a sudden you add a zombie, like an infected to the mix, where people change in like 10 seconds,
And it spreads
now
like
it's
wildfire.
full on like adrenaline panic.
Absolutely, like everybody is getting infected at the same time. The kids are like navigating through this. And
It's almost like the military is really fucking stupid in this movie.
Yeah.
Let's pack everyone really close together.
Yeah, and it's just for me personally, it's a really effective scene of fear that is like I haven't really seen in a lot of other movies as far as like just this.
I don't know why they wouldn't have. I'm getting kind of hung up on the semantics here. Why wouldn't you just have everyone like lock themselves in their apartments?
That would make sense, huh?
Yeah, like have barricaded doors in your apartment because it's just people. Like all you have to do is keep people out of your home.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's a dumb movie, but it's fun.
Yeah, it's dumb, but we need an excuse to pack them in like sardines so we can get this this hellish nightmare
that
sequence.
Mark described in the first movie.
Yeah.
Like stepping on people.
Yeah. No, it's a visual that we see brought to fruition, and it's something where like I feel like the immediate thing I think of is something like World War Z, where you just see mountains of zombies piled on top of each other.
Yeah.
But I feel like the nice thing here is that it's all there's no CGI.
Yeah,
I mean,
like this movie more than I like World War Z.
Yeah,
by like a long shot.
Like it is like a bunch of people, a bunch of extras who are doing this. And I don't know, it's like a really effective scene.
Yeah, this is where we see like massive crowds, which is something that is implied in the first one, but they're like, well, people are probably going to want to see like what like the actual outbreak looked like, and this is kind of a way to show that as like that in a way that can take place chronologically after the first one. It's interesting.
Yeah. Trying to see what else. Yeah, so after this point,
it's just all gas from this point.
Yeah, it's all foot on the gas.
The military shooting people.
They let people out of the garage.
They're all valid targets.
Yeah, they're given the instructions to shoot everybody, shoot them all.
It's terrifying.
Jeremy Renner can't do it.
He's too soft-hearted. That's Jeremy Renner.
He's got a heart of gold.
That's his one defining character trait, is that he didn't want to shoot civilians.
He's the sniper with a heart of gold.
Yep.
Yeah. So they like make a little party.
Yeah, we get a little squad of the kids, Rose Byrne,
and some
Jeremy
random
Renner.
survivor that we'd never really even learn his name.
But he joins the gang.
Yeah,
some dude who's there to die.
Yep.
Yeah. So they they escape out of the safety zone.
Yep.
There's a scene where like the kid has to like zigzag run from
a sniper,
and it's kind of
Jeremy Renner's shooting back, and
it's kind of an intense scene.
He's fully what's the word, left the military or whatever. It's just kind of they firebomb, I think, right after that, right?
Yeah, they firebomb
right as they're escaping, and they literally have to run away from fire in a tube, which is again makes me think of the first movie and how nothing like that would have ever fucking happened.
No,
it becomes like a crazy action movie.
Yeah, it becomes a whole ass thing. Yeah, they escape into abandoned London. There's a scene where Jeremy Renner and Rose Byrne are talking, and she kind of like gives them the rundown of like, we have to keep these kids alive.
That's like right before the worst scene in the movie.
The
funniest scene. I don't know.
It is a funny scene.
It lives in my head.
It escalates.
Yeah.
Yeah, it jumps the shark a bit.
It does. It really jumps the shark. I don't know what producer's idea this scene was.
Yeah. So
what if we?
So all these infected are running at them while
his helicopter friend
arrives with the helicopter, sees that he has survivors with him, and is like, "Oh, I can't take them. I can only take you, man." And tries to fly away, but then the dude who's in the squad, who's not the kids,
the guy whose sole purpose in the movie was to do this thing,
stupid thing.
he jumps on the helicopter. He's holding onto the
foot thing,
the rail of the helicopter.
Get off, motherfucker!
He's like just kind of swinging him around, and then
the helicopter swerves, and the blades literally lawn mow down
all the zombies,
this whole crowd of zombies, and it's like, we are not in Kansas anymore. This is no longer.
I was saying, like, what is this Saints Row?
Yeah,
bullshit?
This is insane, over the top. It doesn't even match the tone of the movie it's in.
No,
it's like this weird, out of place, ridiculous cartoon thing that happens, and it's incredibly gory, and it does live in my head rent free. It's still like it's memorable, at least, I guess.
And then even though we watched this 2 days later, I'm trying to remember exactly how this goes. They go to Wembley Stadium.
Yeah.
Nerve gas infected but unable to start the car.
Yeah, it's the big white clouds of nerve gas come and
Yeah.
Hey,
Jeremy
kids,
Renner.
remember the movie The Mist?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's spooky. You see these soldiers emerge from the mist in this really cool shot.
and then the nerve gas goes into my brain.
Yeah. The car won't start and Jeremy Renner's like, "I'll push."
Oh yeah, he sacrifices himself.
Yeah,
that was
it's
pretty
kind
cool.
of it's fine.
They escape into the London
It's kinda
Underground.
lame. It's not really earned because it's like, who the fuck even is this guy?
We get our Cloverfield scene where where Rose Byrne is using the night vision on the gun.
Yeah, and
to navigate
you
them.
can notice the speed in which we're moving through this movie, and
Well, yeah,
it's
'cause,
compared
like,
to the first, because it's really just
the
a
second
series of action movies.
Yeah, no, it's just
action scenes.
a series of like kind of action / horror scenes
Yeah.
that like you notice I keep referencing like, oh yeah, it's like in this
Yeah.
movie the Mist and like
Meanwhile, they're kind
know.
of getting stalked by their dad, who isn't really acting like a normal infected. He's kind of like hunting them in a weird way. Like he's like in the background of some shots, and he kind of runs away. It's like what's the implication there that he kind of remembers?
I
and
forgot
for
that he
They're just acting on a predatory instinct now.
Well, it's like these infected, like what we've learned is like if they see something move, they're gonna fucking
Go
jolt
after
at it. Yeah.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
and like mindlessly, but he's acting like he's got some kind of cognition, which is weird, and I don't really know where that's coming from.
I don't know. I think it's just a thing where it's like they want to make it more dramatic that he's the one that bites Andy at the end. But yeah, he bites Andy.
He takes the gun that main lady with no arc is using as the night vision.
Yeah.
And he beats her to death, and we see POV of I guess
Right.
he's using the front of the gun.
Oh yeah.
to
the
beat her.
muzzle just like
It's a real kind of a stupid shot.
Yeah, it's very video game. It's very
Yeah, it's a little. You can see how they thought conceptually it would have been really cool, but in practice it kind of doesn't look very.
these
good.
guys should have made a Mortal Kombat movie. Or something. Fucking, but yeah, no. So yeah, Andy gets bit. It turns out that he's immune, like his mom. He runs away
Yeah.
thinking he's gonna turn, and he's
the
like, "I'm not
girl-
one of the monsters, am I?"
The girl kills the dad.
Yeah, the girl kills the dad.
Somehow I don't remember, even though I've seen this movie like 5 times.
Yeah, the second half for me personally, the movie ends when the last interesting scene in the movie is the trapped in a garage scene.
Yeah, it's just kind of like a bunch of like horror zombie concepts, because like a lot of zombie movies take place very far post-apocalypse, and not a lot take place like during the outbreak.
Yeah,
Which is, I guess, what's interesting about this one.
yeah,
Is you can kind of explore what those scenes would look like.
the
But,
scenario this
Yeah.
unfolding, right?
like the firebombing and like the actual running, screaming crowds of people. It's interesting if that's what you want to see.
yeah. Tammy and Andy arrive at Wembley Stadium to find Flynn, who reluctantly flies them to France.
Yep.
The ending of this movie, we see a title card 28 days later, which
We see we see
Math.
the Eiffel Tower.
and there's a bunch of zombies.
And the big twist at the end of this one is now the world is infected.
Yep, the virus has spread to continental
Which
Europe.
completely contradicts the whole point of the first
Movie altogether.
Exactly. Which I guess sets
I
the
have no idea what they're going to do with the sequel.
it sets the ground for making 28 years later makes slightly more sense. But yeah, that's this movie. We talked all about I'm more interested in asking you guys for 28 years later, what do you think they're going to do, and what would you like to see them do?
For me, what it looks like is we're going to tell a completely separate story about this like tribal stage of survivors, like this little community that they've built that they'll probably also just collapse, and we just kind of see that. I honestly, as far as like details about characters and like where the story is going to go, I don't really know, and I don't really even want to know until I sit in the theater and I see it. Because it's Alex Garland and Danny Boyle again, so it's not going to be 28 weeks later at all. Hopefully, I hope to God it's good.
Well, I mean,
as far as connection to the first 2 movies, I think it might just be like all you need to know is society has collapsed and these things are running around and they're a threat, and maybe for all I know, like they haven't seen an infected in like years. That would be interesting.
That's what I thinking about. I think that is the direction they're gonna have to go.
Yeah, because like these, they don't eat. Like they don't eat people. They something unique about these infected is they're just sick people and they starve to death because they're too dumb to know how to eat or even like survive. But you know, that's the direction I'm thinking. What I'm hoping for is something like the first one. Like I want that like super like human story about hope and about a super bleak and dark situation, still being able to find your tribe and find people that you can love and can look out for you. Mm-hmm. That's what I hope, but I don't know. Hope it's good. That's that's all I want.
Rian, what are your hopes for 28 years?
If I can be honest, initially,
I'll be honest the whole time.
Be totally honest.
I saw the trailer with my other half. I forgot what we were watching initially. At first, I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
Is this a dark fantasy or a period movie, kind of like The Northman?
Yeah.
And then come to find out, 28 years later, and then of course my partner, being who they are, had to quip in my ear, hopefully it's better than Civil War. I'm like, but what it did remind me of was the tail end of this 80s British series called Threads, which is about basically what a nuclear holocaust would be like in England, right down to the aftermath that takes place decades. And that's what I was thinking, like, okay, things got really fucking grim. And, you know, it gave me Threads vibes. That's what I'm thinking. And like yourself, I have no real expectations, kind of like I did with 28 Days Later years ago. So I'll walk in, I'll see it, and take it for what it is. For better,
my
for
fingers
worse.
are crossed.
Right, you know.
Yeah. I definitely want to.
We've already gotten one bad sequel to this. I'm fine with 2 if that's what we end up with.
I want a better balance of like, because here's the thing. Well, I think at its core, I definitely think it's going to be like a story that once again focuses on its human characters and like telling a story with that. But like, I do also am interested in seeing the lower elements of like how has the virus evolved, because like in the trailer it seems like there's fucking zombie golems and shit, you know, and like how that comes about.
Yeah, there's like creepy, like half starved.
Yeah, there's like
some people think it's Cillian Murphy. I refuse to believe it.
Apparently it's not. I think that the actor.
Thank God.
Yeah. But you know, and curious to see. So yeah, like, you know, curious to see what this world is gonna look like in this movie for sure.
Nice.
But yeah, now it's time to ask prop. What do you want from this movie? And I'm gonna kind of cheat in that it's not necessarily a prop, but I just want like a mural in like, I want like on a white brick wall the exact font like of the end
is nigh.
The end is of course the end is fucking nigh.
That's pretty cool.
Like just on a big wall in my house.
Extremely fucking nigh.
Yeah. Just real cool, or a tattoo of that.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Would be pretty sick. That's my answer.
Okay. Mine, I think we've established that you can choose a car, so I want the taxi.
Cool.
The cab. Okay, yeah.
I want the cab so bad. I have so many good memories tied to that cab. And for the second one, there's a shot where during the helicopter thing, where it's mowing down the big crowd, there's like a zombie with his head half missing, and I just want that. I want that to put on a shelf.
Hell yeah.
He's like cut. It's like cut like Fruit Ninja, like a watermelon.
Rian, what prop do you want?
From the first one, that's a tough one. This is because there's a lot of things.
Yeah.
I would love that mural that you see in the first half of the movie of all the missing people, like all these notes of like loved ones gone and so forth.
Yeah, that is
just because it's just a haunting thing. From the second one, that's a tough one. That's a very tough one.
Yeah, it really is. There's not a lot of props.
No,
I'm considering it like you can just take one from one of them.
You can just have one.
I can't
I think,
about.
like I said,
greedy.
for the sake of conversation, I'll just take, like, again, the Survivor mural from 28 Days Later.
That's good. Can I go into my pitch for a game real quick?
Oh yeah, tell us about your
Just
idea
for a second.
a 28 days game.
Business proposal.
Here's what I. So it's an open world, but kind of in the sense that like Death Stranding is, where it's like it's still kind of like there's a beginning and an end to it. So I want it's a road trip where it's the same as the movie where you can't really fight them. You have to pretty much run if there's a crowd of like 2 or more. But there's a lot of time where you just don't see any, and they're kind of like hide here and there, and they're not as like abundant as you would think in a normal zombie game. So I want like you have to get to this other point on the other end of the map, and it takes like 10 hours to get there in game. And you have to like take a paper map and like figure out your route. And along the way you can meet people who will you can have like conversations with in the car while you're driving, or like in the back seat, and you can like choose to stop places to collect supplies and to camps and make sure everyone can rest up and get gas.
And would this be a single player experience, Joseph?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Or I guess you could play co-op too.
Yeah.
That'd be cool. But like once the character's dead, they're dead. And like there's got to be like some incentive to where you help them and they help you. So like you feel that when they die, and you and if one of them gets infected, you have to make that choice in the moment to kill them or not.
Okay,
yeah.
like that real quick.
Yeah, like you
Now
don't
or
have
never.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a cool idea.
I think that would be cool. I also want the radio in the car to be able to connect to your Spotify.
That'd be fun.
Yeah. I was just I had a long car ride yesterday, and that's what I was thinking of about like what I would do for a game.
Yeah. Danny Boyle, the folks at Sony, it could be a PlayStation exclusive.
Please.
Sony. What studio? What game developer studio would you want to make it? I said so.
Like Hello Games or something.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. Maybe like Naughty Dog.
Yeah.
But I guess that's already just Last of Us.
I want to play your idea for a Terminator game first, though.
Yeah.
I think about that concept a lot. Of like you were saying how the idea of just something running at you.
Yeah.
Like
it's like an
you're
open
minding
world,
your
and there's
business.
just something coming after you all the time.
You see like a jet in the air flying towards you.
That could just be a GTA mod.
Yeah, that's how I imagine it. Yeah. But yeah, no. This has been Midnight Movie Gang. It is currently 2:58 p.m. Night Movie Gang.
Yep.
This has been a wonderful episode, guys. For those of you just doing it, you can check us out on YouTube at Midnight Movie Gang Podcast. Check that out. We got a new reaction video for The Fly 2 up there, highlight. It's really funny. Check that out.
It's funny.
If you want to listen to the whole thing, watch along the whole movie with us, you can go to Patreon and get the full commentary there.
Yep.
Yeah, follow us on Instagram at Midnight Movie Gang, and thank you so much for listening.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.
All Vita said.
So, here we go. With child expectations and complexes which the police authorities at James Thomas believe to be the lover of Miss Williams, and her partner in the horrible murder of Walter. Where's everybody? And I'm here to go. Oh, please tell me where they've gone. Please tell me. Sorry, I don't know. How long is it? How long could I got in here? Please take us to Albany on 6 o'clock train tonight. What do you think? Special agent, special agent.